welcome to episode 2. In this episode, we are talking about some of the most important control flow concept in C#. At first, we are talking about the conditional statement, and after that, we are talking about the loops. I mean for and for each. In C#, we have situation that you want to make decision based on the user input or a variable. Okay, in situation like this, we should talk about the conditional statement and we should use if else and else if and nested if. Okay, and some situation that we can use switch. Okay, let's get started and do some coding. Suppose you have a variable and we call it score. In the previous episode 1, we talked about the data type and variable and how you can define a variable and the difference between variable type and var. Here I want to define a variable of type int and we call it score and we give it value 85. Okay, and you want to check and print in the output based on the for example student's score. Okay, here you can type if and open and close a parenthesis, and in between them you should write your condition. Here I say if a score is or equal 85, print, for example, excellent. Okay, and we have the other side of if is else. After that, we talk about the else if. Here I say if the score was not greater than 85 or equal, please print it's good. Okay, and if you press a 5, it's excellent. Why? Because a score here is 85 and a score is greater and equal to 85. In the previous episode, I told you we call it the compression operator. Okay, but suppose one of the student is score is, for example, 70, and 70 is good, but other student is, for example, 40. 40 is not good, but 70 is good. In situation that you want to check other condition, you have to type else if and open and close parenthesis and type score, and you say if it's greater or equal and score is if and type, okay, for example, it's good and the other is bad. Okay, what happened here? You say a score if a score was greater or equal 85, please print in the output excellent. Okay, we are make decision based on the score. We call it conditional statement. Else if, in the other side, if a score is greater than 70 or equal 70 and the score is smaller or equal 84, please print in the output good. In other side, please say it's bad or it needs to improve. Okay, let's change the score to, for example, 75, and if you press it say good. Okay, suppose you have a situation that you want to have if this part was true, the other side won't check. Okay, and the program will run and don't check. But what will happen if we have another condition here? What do I mean if we have another if here, and it say if it's equal, if it's equal to, for example, 80, say for example need work, for example. Okay, what will happen here? If the score in the previous, I told you if the score is greater than 85, the program won't check the other condition, but it will work for situation that you have else if or else. But if you have 2 or 3 or more than one if condition, all of them will check. What do you mean? Okay, and if we run the program, we will see in the output we will have excellent and needs work. Okay, for example, let's define another variable and say score 2. Okay, and check score 2. Okay, and press the 5. say it needs work. Why? Because here, let me change it to it and run again. Okay. You see here, it's at first, it's a score is greater or equal 85. Yes, it's true, and it print excellent. And after that, we have a score 2 is 80. Okay, and it's because it's if the other if will check. Okay, and in the output we see needs work. Okay, let's change the position of if to the here to understand it correctly. Okay, suppose here I say else if and it says let me change it to 75. Here, if I change a score to 75 because the if condition is false, it won't the every code between these two curly braces won't print, and it will go to the other condition. It means else if, and it check because it's 75 and a score is greater or equals 70, and it will return true. Okay, and it we will have in the output good. But let me, I think you will think that because the condition here is completely true, the other condition won't check. No, no, because we have other if here, the program will check it. And now you will see in the output two output. Okay, it's good, needs work, because good for the else if and the needs work for the if. Okay, and this is the all conditional statement, and I think I have told you everything about the conditional statement. Let me summarize everything that I told you. In conditional statement we have if and else. If condition between two parentheses is true, the else won't work, and only every code between two curly braces of the if, we call it block of code. The block of code of the if will print in the output, and the else won't check. Okay, and if you have else if uh, for situation that the if is not true, you have to check other condition, and if is false, the else if will check. Okay, but for situation that you have multiple if or conditional statement, every if in the program will check, and if all of them are true, and all of the block of this if will print in the output. Okay, now let's talk about the switch. Okay, you have a situation that you want to compare one value with the many fixed paths. Should you switch? Okay, then the difference between the switch and the if is when you want to have a more clear code and you want to have a clean code. In my opinion, use switch. Let give an example. You have a for example, a variable, and we call it, for example, age is 25, and the syntax of switch is like this. Here, between two parentheses, you should use the variable, the item that you want to compare it with the fixed option. Here, we want to say age, or and between curly braces, you should type like this: chase 20 and colon, and type your code that you want to execute. It say, for example, you are 20. And it's so important. After the block of your code, you should put break. What will do break for us? When one of the case is true and the block of code is executed, the break will take the program out of the switch, and the next line after switch will run. Okay, now let's do 25 and 30, and say you are 25 and say oh, 30. Don't do this. And if you press the 5, you will see the output say you are 25. Okay, first the program come reach to the switch and it say, hey, I have to compare age with the fixed option 20, 25, and 30. And here say the age is 20, it say no. It will go to the next case. It say it's 25, it say it's true, and the console write down print in the output you are 25, and the break will take out the program and it will come here, for example, the line after switch. And what will happen if none of these cases are true? For example, this one is 23 And if you press F5, you will see the line after switch, it works. But if you put something here, it's say, for example, the default. Say the default, what happened and what the default do for us in switch. The default, when the default will work when none of these cases are true, and the default will output in the print in the output, hey, the default is true and the age is not in none of these cases. Okay, let's summarize the switch. Situation that you want to compare one item with the fixed situation and you want to have a clean code, use switch, and it was switch. Now let's talk about the for each and break and continue. They are so important, and please pay attention because it's so important. In the next episode we are talking about the array and list, and in this episode we are using for each and the difference between for and for each. Let's do that. Okay, it's time to talk about the loops. What is loops? What is for? What is for each? While, do while. Uh, Imagine you have a situation that you don't have a very basic variable like a string int, and you have only one variable. For example, you have a variable and we call it, for example, string name, and it's Hussein, and you have a variable int age. It has only one variable, one value. Okay, but the next episode that we should talk about the array and list, and in array and list we have a collection of items. Okay, and the loops that loops, when you should use loops that you want to execute a block of code as long as the condition is reached. Okay, the next loop is for situation that you know how many times the code should be executed and you know how many times, use for. And the syntax of for is like this: first type for and open a parenthesis and open a curly braces. For has three statements. The first statement is the initial value. The second statement is the condition, and the last one is the item that we increase or decrease the, for example, the initial value. And say int I. Let me don't type the capital I is equal to, and put a semicolon after each statement. The second item is until given. Let's define a variable int number. It has, for example, 5, and you can say until I is smaller or equal number I plus plus. Okay, and type I in the output. What do we have in the output? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. How it works? Okay, I is 0, number is 5. It start the loops and it say 0 is smaller or equal than 5. It's a true. It go through the block of code and it print in the output 0, and it will work until the I reach to the 6, and it say 6 is smaller or equal than 5, and it say false, and the block of code is get false, and the console write line won't print the 6 in the output. Okay, it's so important. And if you change this and remove the equal, you won't see the 5 in the output. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's so important. And you can put here, say, for example, 0, and type here, for example, 10, and you say until I is greater than number, type in the output. You say 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. The 4 is so important. And it's not just for checking and putting something in the output. For example, here you can do something like this. For example, say var x is 2. You say, hey, I times the x, and I put it in the output. What do we have in the output? You say 20, 18, 6, and you can do everything that you want to do in the block of code. And I told you between each of these open and close curly braces, you have a block of code. Okay, and now let's talk about the for each. Suppose you have a list. We talk about it. Don't worry. Cars. And you say list we want a collection of type string and say new list string and give a, for example, BMW as or Ferrari. Okay, and now we want to show all of them in the output, and now here you don't have any indexes. That's the important difference between for and for each. Let me type here. One of the most important difference between for each and the for is in the for each you don't have any indexes and you don't know how many times this for each will work and will do in the output, because it's working on the collection on a list of a string and you don't know. But in for you know how many times it works. But for situation that you want to do some special action based on, for example, index, do and use for example, you have a situation that we will talk about in the last subject, break and continue, and you want when the I or initializer item is, for example, 5, continue, or when it is, for example, 6, break. For situation that you want to work in the index and you know how many times it works, use for, and in the other time that you and situation that you are working with array and list, use for each. For each we are using for generic that we will talk about in the object-oriented programming course. Okay, here we have we are printing item in the output, and if you press F5, here you say BMW, Benz, Ferrari. Okay, and here let me give an nested example that you want to use conditional statement and for each. Here you can type, hey, if we are using conditional statement, if x, no, I is 10 or 8, okay, when I is equal to 8, print in the output it's 8, and if you press 5, say it's 8. Now you're using index. For situation like this, use for. But when you're working with array on list and you want to do some action on the list on an array, use for each. Okay, and the last subject is break and continue. Now let's talk about the break and continue. We are using continue. If you have a continue in your program, it means, hey, don't do some special action and just skip. Okay, let me give an example. Here I say if I is equal to 8, continue. Okay, what will happen? Now let's remove it and see the output. Just see the output to see what will happen if we say 20, 18, 16, 14, and 20. Okay, 12. Here, if I paste here and say, here you cannot see 16. Why? Because here I say I is equal to 8. And when suppose the I is now is 8, okay, and is equal, and the condition is 2, and after that the block of if, the block code of if should run, and here I say, hey, the program see it's continue, and you say we should skip. Just memorize the continue as a skip. Okay, and here you cannot see I is 8 and the x is 2, and we should see 16 in the output, but because of the continue we cannot see. But for if I is equal to, for example, 5 brick, okay, what will do? Okay, we say here you we have 20, 18, 16. We cannot see 16 because of the continue, and here we have 5, and because of the I is here we have 5, and the 5 is not let me put an equal to see In here we cannot see, for example, let me see, it's 10, for example, 25. Now here you cannot see anything. Why? Because at the first I is 10, 10 is greater than number, and it say, hey, our I is 10. It say, yes, it's 10, and it's true. And the brick will completely come out of the 4, and the other the other side of the our loops won't work. Okay, just pay attention. If we reach the continue, for example, the for loops, for example, execute 5 times, and we have, for example, here, let me change it to 1 to understand it, change it to plus plus, and let me set, and here you say, oh, forgot, you say 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, and let me remove this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, here I say, hey, if the I was 2, don't continue and take out of the 4 and go to the next line. I mean here, okay? Or let me print, let's say after 4. And in the output now, we will see, hey, we will see, let me print 3. We will see 1, 2, and after 4. You see, 1, 2, after 4. Why? Because now its I is equal to 1. It say here I is 1 and it's not equal to 3. It say print I in the output and we'll see 1. And after that, the I will plus to 1 and it say I is 2 and 2 is not equal to 3. We will see 2 in the output and it will plus plus and it says 3 and the 3 is equal to 3 and the loops will finish and the execution will reach to the end and it won't continue. But if you have this, and let me change it to 4, and you say, hey, if I is equal to 3, continue. Now in the output we'll see 1, 2, and end. Why? Because 1 is not equal to 3 and is not equal to 4, and it will print in the output. We see 1 in the output. And it plus to 1, it will say 1 is I is 2, 2 is not equal to 3, 2 is not equal to 4, and we see in the output. After that, 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 is equal to 3. We will say, hey, skip this line of code, and this line of code won't execute, and we go to the next step. Now it's I is 3, and it will plus to 1 is 4, and I is 4, and the number is 5. And here it's the I is 4, 4 is equal to 4, and it will break and the execution will end. Okay, and it was everything about the conditional statement for each and switch. Now let's summarize this episode. We talk about the conditional statement if and else if, and if nested if. I means the multi-if condition. I told you that we have if and one condition. If it was true, the block of code will execute. In otherwise, the else block of code will execute. For situation that you have else if the if it was false, the else if check the condition, and if it was false, the else will work. Okay, what if you have multiple if? For example, you have 3 if and 1 else if and 1 else. Multiple if, I mean the first, second, and the third if will check, and if one of them was true, the else if and the else won't work on, won't check. Okay, but if you have 1 if, else if, after that if and 1 else, and the first if is it was false, it won't execute the block of code, but the else if is true, it will check. But the next if is it was true, then else if and the if will print the block of code in the output. After that, we talk about the switch. I told you when situation that you want to compare one value with the fixed option and you want to clean code, you switch. And in the last, we talk about the for each break and continue. I told you when you want to work in the index and you know how many times the loops will work. Use for, and when you are using index and you want to put some condition based on this index, and use for. And I told you in the last, the for each we are using when we have array and list. I hope this video was helpful and help you to understand the conditional statement and loops. I'm Hussein, and I'm here to help you to understand programming. Goodbye.